Hey, Nicholas, how are you?
Hey, Nicholas.
Hey, so what's going on, guys?
Good. I love your
Oh,
aurora.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was the coolest one they had to offer.
That's nice.
Yeah, I got your campaign. Looks like we got a couple of things. I'm gonna do a screen share here.
Okay.
Try to make this nice and big for you guys.
Okay.
We got a couple, looks like we got a couple campaigns. Or one campaign split several ways. I'm just gonna get everything opened up for us. Okay. So this one here, we broke these up into different markets, it looks like for you. So this one here was small. This was the Naples Marco Island. Looks like we
Okay.
only 82 dials. 12 people picked up. This is extremely small. 12 people
Yeah.
picked up, which is actually great for 82 dials. If you see your contact rate here was 14.63%. Which that's really high. I would say that that's among some of the highest that
That's
we
really
ever
good.
report.
Mhm.
The accuracy rate was 75%. That is about average for us, maybe a little bit below. Generally, we see 80% plus, but 75% is close enough to 80, to be
What is-
honest. So go
What
ahead.
does that mean? Sorry to interrupt. What does the accuracy rate mean?
What it means is only 3 people of the 12 that we spoke to said that we had.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we spoke to 9 of the exact homeowners that we were looking for.
Okay.
Got
Way
it.
to think of it. And then for text messaging, 17 texts were sent, 3 replies, 0 leads. 0 leads aren't surprising on either of these just because of the volume.
Yeah.
However, the numbers are good. You know, even 3 replies on 17 isn't bad. That's roughly 15%.
Mhm.
So, you know, it's a little over 15 actually. So that's not bad. So KPI wise, this one did well, other than the volume and the leads, but everything else lined up perfectly as a way to
Okay.
look at, to think of this.
Okay.
Then the next one, the next one's looking pretty good. So this next one was Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, Inglewood, Boca Raton. Okay. And then this one was, or Boca Grande. We did 691 dials,
Mhm.
49 people answered, and then
Okay.
4 became leads.
Okay.
Okay. Now this contact rate was much lower
Yeah.
at 7%.
But that's still within range. That's still
Yeah,
good.
yeah, it's not bad. It is half
Yeah.
though. It is half of what the
Yeah.
other one was. But we still produced a good amount of leads. You know,
Mhm.
so a great rule of thumb is that we want to be producing 2 leads per 500 dials in
Mm.
perpetuity. Okay. So like for this to make financial sense and be good ROI for you guys, if we're averaging 2 leads per 500 dials at a minimum, I think that this should definitely be a positive ROI for you guys. So that's a good rule of thumb.
Okay.
Okay. And now again, that's a minimum. That's not where we want to be. That's where we want to be at a minimum, right?
Okay.
To say that this is decent. So then down here, and then we had an 84% contact rate, which is really closer to the numbers that we see. Then
Okay.
with text messaging, there's 264 text messages sent, 16 responses, and 2
Okay.
became a lead.
Okay.
And that's also pretty good. What we like to see is anywhere from a 7 to 15% response rate, kind of like up
Okay.
here. 7 being close to the minimum, and then 15 being really good. You know, because
Okay.
I always say if you're seeing that many people respond, then probably 4 times that are seeing it at least, right? You know, so because
Okay.
those are the people that are just responding to it. So that's always a good sign. And then 2 leads on 264. That's also amazing. The same rule of thumb applies here. you want to be seeing 2 leads per 500 text messages. And then that's
Okay.
really not a minimum. That's actually the high side of texting. So if you're averaging 2 lead per 500 text, you're actually doing pretty good on texting, and you're doubling that. So you
Okay.
guys are on path to average 4 leads for these lists in this market. Okay.
Okay.
So now for the next campaign, you guys have any questions about this before I click the next one?
No, this one I'm good. Do you have any?
No, I'm good.
And then this one over here. So, and then the question I have that I'll probably have for, yeah, I guess this answers it. But I was going to say is, did we call these people multiple times? It does look like we did, because I'm seeing 454 texts and 1,100 dials, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
what that tells me is that, and I don't know this for sure yet, but that there's probably like 454 records over here.
Okay.
And then we called them 1,100 times over there, if I
Okay.
was to guess. Okay.
Okay.
That's what that means. And that's why this is 264 and 691. So Sarah,
Okay.
the other day you called me and you were like, how do we get more out of this? We can call them again, but we've already taken the approach you were calling and asking about, right? We've already called everybody up to 3 times, and we've texted everybody once. So they're pretty, I don't want to say beaten, but they're pretty investigated. That makes sense. So then on this one, Sarasota, Venice, Northport, Inglewood, we did 1,100 dials, 84 people picked up the phone, and 2 became a lead. Okay, so this one was 13 people said they had the wrong number, so our accuracy rate was great. 85% of the people that we spoke to were the right person. 7.19, you know, I think that's common, especially for this area. You know, the more populated the area, or the more popular the area, the more other people are calling them too. And I don't
Yeah.
always mean investors, right? AT&T cold calls, politicians cold call,
Yeah.
right? Like, you know, everybody can kind of do it. So I think that's why we see that contact rate drop. Then on the text messages, the text did better, in my opinion, than the calls did. But the text,
Okay.
we got 454 texts sent. We got that perfect 10% response rate.
Mhm.
And then we got 2 leads from the texting with that. And on a bigger scale, what we might see is certain markets do respond better to texting than calling. Because like I mentioned, let's say a bunch of people are cold calling them. Well, if that's happening, only 7% of people are getting that call. If you're texting and 10% are replying, 35% might be seeing that, as to where they might be ignoring the call. So these are things that we start learning. And this is a small sample size, so we wouldn't discern too much yet. But if this continued, that's what this would tell us, right? If texting kept doing great and cold calling kept doing bad or low. All right, now on to the next one. I think this is our last one. Yeah, okay, this is my last client. So yeah, this one crushed, huh? This one did freaking, this one did awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so on this one, and this is interesting. I love your campaign was so interesting. Like each campaign responded so different. Okay, and I think that's just really cool for you guys to see how this works so different in so many different places, right? Because I do these meetings all day long, so my customers rarely get this big wide view, but because you guys had us break it into 4 different campaigns, you're kind of seeing what I get to see, which is, wow, this one rocked, this one sucked, this one was great, this one wasn't. And sometimes people want to be like, your cold callers, they must have broken overnight. And it's like, look, you know, like honestly, at this point, asking someone if they want to sell isn't hard for us, you know, and it's more about the market and the approach. But I wanted to share. I think that's pretty interesting with your result. You know,
that's super interesting, because now we can kind of go through. Not only did we hit big markets, and little markets, but we also hit them in lower motivational lists and higher motivational lists. So
Right.
we've got 4 different things we can look at here to mix and match, see what's going to be our best campaign. Is it going to be, we'll have to look at it again and like look at the data again, but is it going to be Lee County or the big counties that, busy markets, or with
this one.
higher motivational lists, or more rural markets with higher or lower motivational lists, so. Okay.
And so what I'm seeing too, and I'll give you guys my opinion too on which ones I think are killing it and how I think you guys
please.
should move forward. But yeah, I'll finish up here with this one, and this one was our best one, so it's cool to end on this. Didn't plan that at all, but this one we did 1,058 dials.
Mhm.
Okay, 75 people picked up the phone, and 9 became a lead. Now that 9 number is great. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really what we like to see. If you
Yeah.
see, I created the math down here.
Okay.
I said you want to average 2 leads per 500 dials. You're averaging 2.5 leads per 500 dials, which means you're beating our minimum by 25%, which is good. So this one is one that I would definitely continue to live in because our numbers are lining up.
And that's our main market too. So that's great news.
That is
And
good.
then, that is great news. And then, now on this one, 11 people said wrong number, which were perfectly in line at that 85% mark. So now this is cool. So you guys really got a feel for it. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, 3 of them hit 84 to 85%. 1 of them hit 75%. I like this because very rarely do customers get this big perspective. Your contact rate was 7% again. We seem to be hanging out there a little bit. And that could also be in results to the list. Sometimes when their lists are more distressed, less people answer, right? And that's
Yeah.
because bill collectors are calling them, other real estate investors are calling them. So the people that are hurting more are more harassed, right,
Yeah.
by the world. So that's probably why maybe on some of these we're seeing the 7%. Then the text messaging, ironically enough, this is why I love this. The one time the cold calling blows up, the text messaging doesn't do
Yeah.
shit,
Yeah.
And now I love texting because it's so inexpensive. And to give you guys the numbers, it's a quarter of the cost of cold calling.
Okay.
So in most cases, if you're going to cold call, I always recommend texting. But I don't always recommend calling if you're just going to text, right? So there's kind of a difference there because cold calling is 4 times the price as a way to think of
Okay.
it.
So you don't recommend cold calling if you're just going to text.
Yeah, what I mean is if you're going to do cold calling, I'm always going to recommend texting 100% of the time. If you're just going to do texting, I respect that it might not be in the budget to also cold call, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So like I kind of, because it's so inexpensive to add on. So I think texting is good to keep around. And then I'm also going to have my team, Brenzi's on here. She's my executive assistant. Brenzi, could you have the team just comb through those 90 responses one more time? And let's see if there's anything that we may have missed that may have actually been a lead. If you could do that.
Okay.
So quick question, Nicholas, do you offer just texting campaigns too? I know I didn't go back and look.
Yeah, I offer just text messaging as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can probably pull that up here real quick.
Background. What do you think about that?
We'll talk about it.
And then the one market, yeah, here's just texting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then the one,
Do that.
and what I would probably do based off what I'm seeing is I would continue the same in the Lehigh Acres market and do more of the same there. What we're looking for is a continuation. Are we continuing to average it? Were these 9 leads a low average, a high average? Were they a fluke? And we're going to get less. So I recommend going back in. If we can go back in and see more consistent leads, then we'll know that that's just what this market yields. Okay. Right now, we're kind of, we can see patterns, but we really don't know if they're going to stick. Okay. On this one, for example, I
Let's look at
would,
stuff, yeah,
I would probably do one more sample size of doing both on this one. These
Okay.
numbers really aren't that far off, and you did get 2 texts. Now, if the text messaging wins again after the next one, then I would just stick with texting in this market and drop cold calling.
okay,
Or I
Okay.
would go to text messaging and put in foreign cold callers and then try
Okay.
those. But it's your call, whatever you guys want to do. But those would be your 2 choices. Maybe the Americans don't matter as much. If it's a more saturated market, send in the
Yeah.
cheaper guy. You might still get 2 or 3 leads, okay, with them. If it's that saturated, then just keep the texting going, would be my recommendation for this one.
okay. Do you notice in general with different different markets, is there a correlation between, like, does texting work better in more heavily
There's not,
marketed areas?
yeah, there's not a correlation, honestly, until we
Okay.
test. I will say that in more saturated markets, texting does outperform cold calling,
Yeah.
right? So,
Mm.
you know, if it's a known saturated or populated market, there's a better chance your texting campaign's going to do well than your cold calling campaign. Like, that is true, which is also why I do recommend the foreign team in those more saturated markets. Because I always say, if we know the results are going to be less, let's send in the cheaper guy.
Okay. Okay.
Is kind of my theory.
Hmm.
On this campaign with Charlotte, this one was actually really good. Okay. If this one continued out, this one would actually probably be your highest performer numerically. Okay. So,
Yeah.
because if this number doubled to 8 and this number doubled to 4, this would actually be the most leads you got on a campaign for the numbers.
Okay.
Okay. That's
So-
good to know.
And then this one wasn't big enough to figure anything out with the 80.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't know, maybe your lists are big and maybe you guys just ran out of dials. Maybe we dialed everything here. I'm not sure. Brenzy, could you look into any of their campaigns and have the team text them and me and let us know if there's any undialed leads from their campaign, any undialed fresh leads, which is leads that haven't been called at all yet. Not anyone who's been touched multiple times. So only fresh leads that haven't been dialed yet. If you could let us know by the end of the day, that'd be great.
Okay.
Hmm. Okay. Do you recommend if so let's say we do Lee County again, do you recommend one list throughout for like a 2000, if I'm doing the same one again, same package again, one list of 2000 contacts, or is it better because some of my markets I don't know that I can pull that many in one kind of campaign.
Yeah, you know, I think so really out of everything you guys sent, you know, tired landlords is going to be your biggest list, right? Everything else is going to be small and finite. Your lean list, tiny. Senior out of state, tiny, right? You know, so absentees is really the only list you can really approach at scale in any market, right? Or we can shift to owner occupied. But yes, my answer to you is if you're out of all the other stuff, absolutely. Absentees, 35% or greater. I think that's perfectly fine to send. That's how most clients do it. I like the way you guys did it. Like we had all this data. And if it's okay with you, I would actually love to use this as like a video that I maybe upload to YouTube. So a lot of people learn.
I don't know. Do you mind?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, I just think that this would be super cool. You know, I'm not kidding. A lot of clients don't get all this experience on one campaign. I love that you guys got this really around the world view of lead gen today. And I'm like, damn, this is really valuable, you know, to people. But yeah, I think that one list is perfectly fine, and that's how most people do it. And I think that we'll see more. So if the numbers
Yeah.
average less, then we might know that maybe those leads were coming from those more distressed lists.
Okay.
And also, I don't know if you guys already received a call log from us, but the call log will actually tell you, if I'm not mistaken, which list the leads came from.
Mhm.
Okay. Yes. Yes.
So Brenzy, and we'll just get this sent to us. Brenzy, if you could get the call log of only the leads and make sure one of the columns is the list that it came from, and send that to both of us as well, Brenzy, and then we can review. And that's probably something to nerd out on, like at a later date, but we'll at least have this data to know how many leads came from the vacants, how many leads came from this other thing.
Okay.
So that will be pretty cool.
Cool.
Okay.
We noticed a lot more like leads coming from the land, as you
Yeah.
mentioned beforehand. But and then we actually got one under contract, and I guess the price wasn't right as well what I
Correct.
negotiated with them, but we've never done land. I mean, we've sold a couple of lots down in like Charlotte area, but
Yeah.
that's very different from like unimproved land.
Yeah,
So,
little raw.
so that'd be an opportunity for us to learn more about land and things, because I noticed that like even us who we're used to comping properties and everything, it was super hard to get a value on that land.
Yeah, land is definitely what, and I'm doing a lot of learning. I recently just took an executive position with a land education company.
Okay.
And a lot of your blind spots are my blind spots, right? I'm not scared of land. I'm like, well, how do we comp it and how do we sell it, right? Those
Yeah.
are my two questions. Acquiring it is rather easy. But so I'm hoping to really capture some knowledge over the next month or two so I can help shortcut that.
Okay.
In the meantime, I can always help you guys move a contract. I do have to go. I've got my next call starting.
Okay.
But next time you guys get a contract, feel free to reach out to me
Okay.
right away. And what I can do is I can hook you up with like a land investor, for example.
Okay.
And then at least if it doesn't close, you could maybe turn them into a mentor or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
right? You know,
Yeah.
would be a cool way to think of it. But I do have to run. If you guys
Okay.
have any additional questions, you can call me later today or anything. I don't
Okay.
mean to rush you off.
No.
But no, thank you guys so much for your time, and I'll probably hear from you, I'm sure, in a couple days, and then let me know if you need anything.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank
for
you
your
much,
time.
Nicholas.
Thank you, Sarah. See you guys.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.